it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. All right, everybody, it is me, Coach Tori, and I have another special guest today. As I've been saying, we are really trying to focus on the mental health part, mental health with running, so not just going one direction or the other direction or whatever direction I'm going, kind of sticking with mental health and running. So I thought I'd bring in some experts as of late, and we have one with us now. We have Rachel Clark. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Do you mind introducing yourself? Because as I was even looking at your email signature, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things after it. I'm like, I will, I can't get it right. So can you
it's
just
like the whole alphabet? Yeah.
I know.
My name is Rachel Clark. I'm a manager of recovery coaching at Mountainside Treatment Center. A lot of the abbreviations that you see are recovery coaching certifications, but I also just got my LMSW for social work in December, so that was very exciting. I work at a treatment center, and a big proponent of like what we, work with and what we promote is very much like wellness in recovery, and like how there's different avenues to that. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about how running helped with my own recovery journey.
Sorry. And again, this happened to me the other day. My air conditioner turned on, even though I turned the system off. I don't know what is happening here, but the audio should be fine. Can you start actually, because you've run some local races, where are you located?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Okay. Can you first talk about, because I saw your list of races. Let me see if I have it here. I was like, oh, okay, Broad Street, that's Philly.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I've done a couple of Philly runs too. So I'm between New York and Philly. I've done a bunch of races. And actually Broad Street, I did that a month ago, and that was my first time running Broad Street. And I think that was a definitely mental challenge. It wasn't like the distance that wasn't as challenging, but it was kind of like a runner's nightmare. I started the race and I was kind of scrambling. My headphones didn't connect properly, so they were cutting in and out. And then it was pouring that whole race. So then my headphones kind of stopped running altogether, and I've never really done a race without music. So, I kind of just kept telling myself, I was like, all right, like I'll get through this. Like it'll be a lot more challenging, but I'll get through it. And honestly, I think that really helped. It's like, oh, now I know I can run without headphones. And, I think anything is possible with running. And it's like always just going to that next challenge and seeing like what you're capable of.
What were you thinking about? Because I know, so I often run with headphones now, and I used to always listen to music, but then I found myself like messing around being like, I don't like the song, or I want to hear this song again, or so that I usually do like books or podcasts, but I used to never run with music. And I feel like I would just like repeat lots of like really like repetitive phrases or repetitive parts of songs. Like, what did you find yourself thinking about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think my first thought was like, I can't wait for this to be done. I was like, all right. And when you do distance running, it's you can visualize it. You're like, okay, I only have 5 more miles. Like I've done 5 miles, so many times. And this was, my music stopped working like halfway through the race. But I think this is something that I tell myself a lot, especially when I'm running, is, for my recovery journey and my sobriety journey, I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges I've ever overcome. But like really telling myself, it's like, okay, like I got sober. I can get through a 10-mile race without music, like having that mentality that like I did this, so everything else after that seems less daunting.
Yeah, I was going to start talking more about races, but I feel like that was a good segue to keeping us kind of on track of your journey. Would you want to start with like your own personal recovery journey, or would it make sense to start as like you as a recovery coach?
Yeah, I could definitely get into my own personal recovery journey. I think that's a good place to start, because I think that's, what got me to this point.
Yeah. So running was a big part of that. Am I right? Or was that more of like, just, it kind of all happened at the same time, or?
Yeah. So, a bit about my recovery journey. So I got sober in February 2019. So I had a year under my belt, and then COVID hit 1 year after. And, I had run before in the past, but I wasn't as like adamant or as consistent with it. And, COVID happened. I couldn't go to the gym like I normally was. And so I really was like, all right, like I'm going to get into running. Like I wanted to get outside, and because I was like by myself in my apartment for most of COVID. So I knew I had to do something so I could, not get stir crazy, or like not, my mental capacity not be as good as it normally is. But yeah, so it's like I really, and like this is what I always love about running too. It's like I think it's the easiest thing to build on. Like when I was first doing it, I think I was starting with like a mile and a half, because I just wanted to see how it felt. And then, I was getting more consistent with it, and then it seemed a lot easier and a lot more doable. So then I slowly build up to it, because I think that's what people think. It's like, oh, like running so intimidating. Like I hate cardio, or I hate just the idea of running. But I mean, my thing is always just saying, it's easy to build up to. You're not going to go out and run like a half marathon your first time running. And I think that was what my mentality was. I was like, I'm going to try a little bit and just add on each time. And yeah, and then it became easier and easier. And then that I think tremendously helped me, especially during COVID, especially with my recovery, because, there wasn't any routine with anything else. So I was like, I had running, and it gave me that clarity like every day. It's like, okay, like, yeah, it seems like everything in the world's ending, but every time I would run, I would get that mental reset. And, I use that a lot now too. Like I'm still very consistent with going to like 12-step meetings and stuff like that. But sometimes it gets busy, or you're traveling. And I was just in upstate this past week, and, there wasn't as many meetings, or it wasn't as available. So I was like, okay, I have to go running. Like, it's not like, oh, like I just want to go for a run. In my head, I was like, I have to go running to feel that mental reset and to like be able to decompress. So, I mean, honestly, like that's really what's helped me so much. And I just love that it's like you're always able to challenge yourself and like go to the next level. So yeah, I mean, that's why it's been so helpful to me.
Yeah, like especially with running, like distances, I think there's always a new goal, and I feel like you don't always have to like search for one. Like, I mean, I'm sure like anything, there's always going to be some other kind of goal you can push yourself, but it's like running, it's really like, okay, do I want to be faster? Do I want to run farther? Do I want to just feel better while I'm doing it? You know what I mean? Like there's always some way to have something you're working towards. So I imagine that is like really good to keep, someone who needs a little more structure and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love it, because you're kind of always challenging yourself, and it's like the most exciting, like when you beat your own personal record, and it's like kind of building on that each time. And, like I'm a very competitive person, and like I'll run with friends, and sometimes I'll get discouraged, like, oh, they had a faster time. But then I have to take a step back and be like, okay, well, I did a lot better than I did last time I did this race. And, I keep that in mind, because like that is like such a gratifying feeling, just like knowing that I'm improving and like that I'm continuing to build on this skill.
Yeah. And now, sorry, I'm like, my brain kind of went in other directions too. Were you a recovery coach? Is it a newer kind of thing, or was that something you always did, or like, how did that come about?
Yeah. So I would say it's relatively newer. Like, I've been with Mountainside for the past 2 years now. Prior to that, I was working in mental health, actually. So, I had a lot of clients that would be like in psych units and stuff like that. But I kind of made the transition more towards like addiction and recovery because of, my own journey with that. And I really wanted to be able to like talk about my experience and like shed some light on that for other people. And that's what really made me get into recovery coaching. I felt like, I was like, well, if I was able to get sober, like anyone could get sober. So I really wanted to be able to like talk about my journey and talk about how I got to that point. So yeah, I mean, like, that's why I got into recovery coaching, because like that's what it is. It's like you're telling your story, you get to have that peer work. And it's interesting too, because like I do recovery coaching, and I also now have a clinical background, so I'm kind of in both worlds. But I mean, just working in addiction and being able to talk about your experience, I feel like is the most gratifying feeling, because you know that you're able to like help someone else and like pass it on to someone else. So yeah, I mean, I love it. It's the best job I've ever had.
That is so awesome. Now, because again, it sounds like part of that is you sharing your story, and because running was, it seems like a big part of, even like now why you're probably doing so well with everything. Is that something that you try to help other people like find that, whether it is running or if it is some other kind of like physical outlet, is that like a big part of, just recovery, or is it kind of really individualized?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of recovery. And I think that's very much like what we preach at Mountainside. Like there's multiple pathways to recovery. It's not gonna same thing work for every person. And that's it. Like, like the clients I work with, it's like, okay, like let's figure out what's gonna work for you. And, I've had a lot of clients that have found running to be very helpful for them. And it's cool. Like I'm like, oh, I should start like a recovery running club. Because like, and I think this is why we're talking about it, because it's more than just running. Like it's a lot deeper than that. It's it's a whole like psyche change. It's really meditative. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the cool part, and that's what I help clients to discover. Like, okay, like yeah, like there's like the old school ways of recovery and stuff like that, but like maybe let's try something different. Let's try something that you haven't tried before. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see. Like I just did the Brooklyn Half Marathon on Saturday, and one of my clients actually ran it as well. And like that was really cool, because he struggled with his recovery in the past, but like the fact that he was able to show up for this race, and like he was really proud of his time, and like that's it. Like I think that just exemplifies like the resilience that comes with recovery, and also with running. Like you bounce back from these situations, and it makes you stronger for it.
Yeah, I mean, the mental piece I think is like, I mean, it's always for me been like a huge thing of like, yeah, you're able to accomplish this, and how it translates to so many other aspects of life. Kind of just like we were talking about with the kids running club, right? Like how we can take the lessons we learned from running and apply it to so many other things. But even like, I imagine, because you have to be like healthy, I mean, there are definitely unhealthy runners. I know I'm not always like the healthiest nutrition or whatever, but like, you're trying to fuel your body to be a better runner. So like that kind of also would perpetuate, hopefully, like healthy choices and that kind of thing too. I imagine that's like part of it as well, maybe, or just it kind of helps, right?
Yeah. I mean, that actually brings up like a funny story for me. So when I did the Brooklyn Half last year, I called it like my redemption run, because I hadn't done a half marathon in 10 years. And so when my first half marathon, I was in college, so I wasn't sober then. I was still drinking, and like I had gone out the night before, and I had the half marathon the next day. So like, I mean, even talking about it now, like I don't know how I did it. I don't know. I think when you're younger, your body's more resilient, can go through a lot more things. But like even the story itself was dramatic, because like I ran it with my mom, and like I was feeling terrible running. Like I did not feel great. And my mom, like, she ends up getting a leg cramp at mile 5, and it was like the Titanic. She's like, go on without me. And like, but like I was like very, like, I think like hungover, like not feeling great. I was running so slow, I probably must have been going backwards, but she ends up catching up to me, and like we finished it, which was beautiful. But for me, like in my head, now looking back, like I didn't count that like as a half marathon. Like I don't know how I did. It wasn't like I trained for it, or it wasn't in my best physical self. So now when I do it, it's like such a serious thing. Like I know, like I have to eat the right thing, I have to make sure I get enough sleep, and I make sure I'm training for it. So like just like the difference in that, and like how I really care about my races. It's not like something I'm just doing on a whim. Yeah, I mean, just that transformation, I think, is like incredible, and just how much like running can really transform you and transform your perspective on things.
Yeah. Oh, no, totally. Kind of with that, I feel like, because as a runner, I'm sure you know, like we get so into running and all thing running, and then, you know, the next thing we know, our whole life revolves around running. I imagine like you probably, and maybe I'm just assuming, but like, you know I have to practice balance and being like, I can't just make my life about running.
Yeah.
So I imagine someone who's also in recovery would have to just think of balance in a lot of different ways too. Is that something that you personally always kind of are like, okay, am I being too into this running? Or is it something you probably also talk to the people you work with about too?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm an extremist in a lot of things that I do. So yeah, I that definitely tends to happen. Yeah, and I think when I was like first getting into running, I'm like, oh, well, like, you know, oh, I didn't run 5 miles today. Like, what was the point? And actually had a friend say like, okay, well, like maybe just if you run it all, like that's a big deal. And like to kind of relook at it that way, that, you know, it doesn't have to be a certain amount of distance. It's like, I think just getting out there. And that was really helpful for me because I used to be hard on myself. Like, oh, I didn't do as much as I thought I was going to do. But yeah, I mean, I do try and balance it because, you know, I don't want to push it too much and be running like every single day and then like get an injury. So like I try to switch it up. Like I'll do like running, or I go to the gym and do like more like HIIT workouts with like weights and like stuff like that. So I do try to switch it up, but I mean, it seems like running is a big part of my personality. I feel like everyone who knows me like knows that I'm into running and knows that like it's a big part of my life. But yeah, I mean, trying to find that balance, because like you do have to dedicate so much time to it. So it's, you know, I try to do it, you know, like in the mornings or like on weekends, or be like, okay, like I'm gonna do a run first thing in the morning and then I'll have the rest of the day. So yeah, like that's really helped me to have that balance, because yeah, I mean, it could easily go to the most extreme where, you know, like that's all I'm doing, or like that's all I have time for. So yeah, I really have tried to find balance with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just imagine, because I know it can be so hard, and you see so many people all the time who are, you know, they're doing some kind of running streak for the past like 3 years, and it's like, yeah, that might be great, that might be motivating, but also like it might be damaging your body, you know, like all kinds of things. So I'm just always curious of like how other people find balance. I asked someone, I did an interview last night, and I asked the same kind of question of like, you know, how do you either work with people and help them find balance, or like finding the balance yourself? And she kind of was like, I'm not there yet, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm asking because like I don't really, like, you know, you're forced sometimes, right? Like life, you know, either you get injured or you're too busy at home or whatever, but it's like, yeah, I feel like a lot of us don't have a great answer as of like, yes, no, I found a really good way to make sure I'm only doing this much, and, you know, having like you mentioned like the cross training and all that stuff. So
well, yeah, I mean, I don't have it completely down either. Like I still, you know, struggle with it, because like I won't run all week and then I'll go for like a 10-mile run, you know, and like try to like make up for it, or be like, now I have to do a long run, like now I have the time. And it's like, I think a lot of times my body's like, whoa, like where did this come from?
right.
So I think I would like to try to do like smaller runs throughout the week, so it's not just like overload on the weekend. So yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.
Now, your job, is that in a residential type place? Because I know like that can also be a lot too, working in that, because I worked residential for a bunch of years, and it kind of is hard to get away from work in that kind of setting when like things are kind of going on all the time. Is it like that, or is it not quite like that?
Well, yeah, so we have our residentials actually in Connecticut,
Okay.
but like my office is, you know, it's clients aren't staying there. They come in for a session, then they leave. But it's still hard in general to turn off work.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm thinking about work all the time, even when I'm at home, or even, you know, at night. But like that's where I really rely on running. Like I'm like, okay, I need this time to just like not think about anything else. And that's where I find it like very meditative. I'm like, okay, like I can take a step back, relax. It's like, it's forced meditation for me, because like I don't do as much meditation as I would like. But like when I go running, I'm like, okay, like I'm not feeling stressed. I don't have to think of every single thing all at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what helps me decompress.
Yeah, no, it is like taking me back to a couple of years ago. Is like I was at work and I ran, because when I was running, that was not when I was thinking about all the other things I needed to think about for work. So yeah, I totally get that too. Now, you said you listen to music. Are you usually a music person when you're running?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you do like Spotify radio or something, or do you have like your playlist all picked out, or you kind of like shuffle it up? I'm always curious.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny. So I had like a 13.1 playlist, which is like my half marathon playlist.
Yeah.
On Spotify that I've used, like, it's just like curated that songs that I like to listen to. But I recently got the Apple Watch, and I don't know, for some reason it's like you have to like split up the playlist into like 50 songs each to play from your watch. So like that's been interesting, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like these 50 songs by themselves. Like I like them more like mixed in. But you know, it's good. It's funny too, because I don't know what it is. It's lately my headphones have not been as reliable, and you know, I have the AirPods or whatever, but when I did the half marathon this weekend, they were like cutting out a little bit, and again, it was like halfway through the race. I don't know what it is about mile 5, but it seems like that's when that keeps happening to me. But I was like, I'm not gonna have like the same experience from when I did Broad Street, so I was able to kind of like calm down a little, because like when you're in the middle of a race, you know, I really try not to stop for anything, because then it's like a lot harder to start again. Mm-hmm. But I really like had to tell myself, I'm like, okay, like give yourself like 20 seconds, like reset, figure it out, and then, you know, continue on with the race. So I was able to get my music playing again. But I was happy that I was able to calm down a bit, because I was like, I don't know if I could do another race without music. But yeah, like, so it is funny, as much as you train and stuff like that, there's always things that can happen, like unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, I mean, the music is huge for me. Like that really helps, because I don't like to like hear myself breathing or anything like that. And like, it like helps take my mind off things. So yeah, I love using music to run.
And it like helps get into that like meditative state, like you're saying, right? Like it helps give your brain something to focus on that's not just your breathing or your feet, because like sometimes we really don't want to just hear like, oh my god, are my feet really that loud, or like am I really breathing that hard, or why does it sound kind of like a wheeze now, you know what I mean? Like I don't need to be thinking about that. I just want to like kind of zone out. So yeah, no, actually, I get that.
It's cool too, like certain songs just like really evoke like certain emotions out of me. Like I can hear a certain song, like I'll be like dying in the middle of the race, and I'm like, oh okay, like I just got like, you know, a second win. And actually there was a song when I did the half marathon that came on, it was, you know, that song Fight Song by I think Rachel, I don't know her last name. Yeah, so
I know the song, but I know
the song. So that came on, and I was like towards the end of the half marathon, and it just like brought me back, because like that was a song that was like playing the whole time I was in treatment. So I was like, wow, like what a full circle moment. Like I went from like listening to a song in treatment like years ago, and now like this is coming on as I'm like finishing my race. Like that, it was like very emotional for me, because it just kind of showed like how far I've come in this, and like a lot of it is due to running, like being able to take myself from one place to another, and you know, have that mental clarity now.
Oh, I love that. And like, I'm sure it was, you know, like you're saying, like it brings those emotions back to, and it's like, as you were overcoming one struggle, like now you're in your race overcoming a different kind of struggle, but it's like, yeah, that's the same kind of thing that you're like, yeah, I am strong enough to do this, right? I love that. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, I think that's like the core of running. It's like, it's the mental strength, you know, it's like, it seems so daunting when you hear like how far a race is, or like how many miles, but I think it's like really getting to the point of being like, okay, like I got this, like I keep doing this, like, you know, you just have to put one foot in front of the other, and you know, eventually you'll get to the finish line. And I think that's what's really helped me. And like, even, you know, if I'm feeling any pain or anything like that, I'm like, I'm so close to being done. I just want to finish on a good note. I just want to keep running, because I think that's it. It's like going through, having experienced those obstacles, like I know like I have the ability to like keep overcoming obstacles.
Yeah. Well, my dad and I were talking the other day actually about think we're talking about like running books. We were talking about like people who have really excelled, especially at like distance running, and a lot of them seem to have overcome some kind of adversity, whether it was like childhood trauma or abuse or something like that. We're talking about like, do you think that's like connected of like, you had to really, you've been through something really hard, but you came out on the other side, and so like you now are able to push yourself? Do you think like that has any, whether it really correlates or not, but like being able to overcome things in, especially like really hard stuff in one situation, like can really make you, especially like lean towards those endurance kind of sports where like, you're gonna feel pain, it's gonna be tough, you have to be in it, but like you do overcome?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I think that's a huge part of it. And like it is funny that you mentioned that, because go to 12-step meetings and stuff like that, and people are always like, oh well, people in recovery are able to really like overcome anything because like we've been through the worst, so it's like everything else like doesn't seem as bad, or it's like you just are able to like rechannel that energy, so and then that's what I look at it like. It's like all that energy that was used in the past, it's like now you can use it in a more positive way. And like I think that's the same with like trauma and mental health. It's like, okay, like you went through this very challenging time and where you had to really dig deep and really take a look at yourself, and now it's like, okay, I can use that. And when it comes to running, it's like, yeah, there's all these outside factors, all these things that are happening, but like at the end of the day, it's like you just have to really mentally tell yourself that like you'll be able to get through this, like you've gotten through other things in the past.
Yeah, just like that, all that mental training, right? Like you tell yourself you can get through it, you're able to push through anything, right?
Yeah, that's it exactly.
That's so interesting. Totally pivoting, but I'm looking at my notes and it just like keeps hitting my eyes for some reason. You're running the 2024 New York City Marathon.
Oh yeah, so it's actually, well, I'm going to be doing 2024, but I'll actually be doing 2023 as well, and that'll be my first one, so that's very exciting.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Okay, so you're doing both. How did that happen?
So in New York, we have like a 9+1 program. So you run 9 races within the year, and then you volunteer at one. And then you get automatically qualified for the marathon. So I think like when I really got into running, like, and I think it was, like height of COVID, I like just had this like goal for myself. I'm like, yeah, why not? I live in New York. I'll run the marathon, and like, just like on a whim. So, I didn't know about this program, but then I found out, and I was like, when I first said this, I think I was like a year behind, because it's like, I did races last year to qualify for 2023. So it's always like a year behind. But yeah, I mean, I am very excited for it, and I know it's going to be emotional and challenging, but I just think it's going to be so exciting. And, I had volunteered at the New York City Marathon this past November, and it's just like really beautiful seeing how the whole city comes together and like just like cheering everyone on. And it's really such an iconic moment. And, that I can't wait to experience that and, have that for myself. So it was cool volunteering, and now it's going to be even more exciting being on the other side of it.
I was gonna ask what race you volunteered for and like what that was like. That's so cool that you got to volunteer for the marathon last year.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like I did a lot with telling people which corral to go to and like giving them directions, and just like, even something like that, I felt like I was really able to help them, or like I felt like I was like giving people pep talks, like you're gonna do great, like this is gonna be like such a fun experience. So like that was awesome, being able to like show up and like be there for other people, and like giving them these pep talks, with having like trying to dispel their pre-race jitters. I mean it was just like really, really beautiful and powerful, like seeing everyone, because I volunteered at the start of the marathon, so you get to see everyone cross the bridge, and just like how there's so many people around cheering. So it was really, really cool to see that. So I loved that experience.
Now, have you started your marathon training? I imagine probably, right?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Okay.
Like, I'm like, I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm doing a bunch of races. Like that should be a good training. which, you know, the more I talk about it, I'm like, I should probably do more than that. But I know, like, I did the half. I'm doing another half in October, I think. But then they have like also like marathon series, like training races. So there's like a 12-mile race, like an 18-mile race.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So like, I think that will be helpful too. I mean, I like races. I mean, I love running on my own, but I feel like races, you always get your best time. You're always the fastest in races just because like the energy and like just the adrenaline of being in a race. Like when I'm running by myself in Central Park, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll stop for water. Like, you know, like much, I think, more leisurely about it. Whereas like in a race, it's just like very exciting. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot. I'm doing, I think, like a race a month until the marathon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have 2 this month. I have like a little 4-mile race and then a 10K. So like, you know, I have that, and then like I said, more of the marathon. But you know, I've known a lot of people who've done the marathon, and everyone always asks me like, "What's your training plan?" And I'm like, I don't know if I have like a specific one yet, but yeah, definitely something I need to look into.
No, but I mean, you have a plan, and I mean, yeah, I think I would be interested to see like how you feel after the marathon, like especially if you don't do like the traditional kind of like your ramp up to 20 or 21 or 22, you know, like how that actually goes for you. Cause I mean, that could be really interesting to see like, oh yeah, I've just been doing half marathons and then I did my marathon and I was good. You know what I mean? Like that would be cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, doing some of the longer races will be helpful. Like I think once I do the 18-mile race, like that'll be like a good, and I think I'm doing that in August. That will be kind of like a good indicator. Like, okay, like let's see how that was. And then it's only, you know, like 8 miles after that. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I don't want to, you know, go in not prepared, but I feel like I've gotten this far, like doing running kind of like my own way. Like I've never really been part of like a running club or like really followed any specific thing for running. Like I just kind of like, when I want to go for a run, I just go out and go, you know. And obviously I love the idea of a running club, and like I think they're great. I think for me, like I just was like, okay, like I'm just gonna do this now. And obviously like I think eventually I'll join one, because I think just having that camaraderie is so beautiful. But yeah, like so we'll see. I'll do this marathon, and then I'll see how it compares to the next one I do.
So you're running solo, or are you running with like a friend? Because I'm guessing you're not running with a group, but are you running with people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm running solo. I know other people, like I have some friends that are running it as well. So yeah, but like for the most part, I feel like it's pretty much solo. And yeah, like I don't like, even in races, I don't ever like really run with anyone. I'm just kind of like in my own world. Which is, you know, kind of interesting. And actually, the race I did this past weekend, I mentioned like my client was running it as well, and like we were like neck and neck for a while, and then he passed me, and I was like, oh, like that's such a bummer. Like, and but then I had to like realize, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm running my own race. Like, you know, it's nice running with other people, but it's like you're still, you want to work on your time and get your PR and get to that. So even if other people beat me, I was just like, well, I beat myself from last time I did it. So like that was exciting for me.
And I'm guessing you're gonna have to get new headphones before the marathon, so they don't like die out at mile 5, and you're like, well, I have 21
oh my God.
to go. Can you imagine?
That I think would be like my worst running nightmare. Yeah, I mean, I just got the AirPod Maxes, so I'm hoping that they'll be up to the challenge. But yeah, like I think just making sure that's all prepared, like testing everything out. But like, even, you know, you can prepare as much as you want, but like some things, there's unforeseen circumstances, you know. So I think knowing that I have the ability to still power through it, even, you know, like if my headphones stop working, or like if it's pouring rain, like I've already experienced that. So I'm like, okay, like if worst comes to worst, I know I will be able to get through it some way or somehow.
Yeah, I love your mindset about running because I feel like it's so simple, and I feel like also like can be easy to just be like, yeah, like, you know, she just runs her own race. But I feel like there's so much like in that of like, you know, you focus on yourself, you focus on, you know, knowing what you can do, knowing what you're able to do, and like really just making it about like being a positive experience. Yeah, no, I think that is so awesome. Do you have any, I know I didn't say I was going to ask you for like, you know, words of wisdom or tips or anything, but like, do you have any like last, like, you know, this is why running is so good for you, or how to incorporate it healthily, or, you know, anything completely unrelated to what I just said, because that was probably boring.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway with running is that like really, you know, anyone can do it. I think there's like this preconception that like you have to like love cardio, or you have to like love being like running in general. And I think for me, it's like I love kind of like where it takes me, like where, like how I feel after, like what I'm feeling during it. And, you know, and I always say like people that are nervous about running or like scared to get into it, I'm like, you know, you're not going to go off and start and do a half marathon, you know, like you build up to it. And it's like the easiest thing to build onto. And I think that's it. It's so gratifying, and it's such a simple thing that you're doing, you know, you're like just outside running. But, you know, I love it too, because like, especially in the city, I feel like I see things that I wouldn't normally see just like on my regular commute. It kind of like takes me into like a different world. It's kind of like, you know, a Narnia of some sort. Like you get to see things from a whole different perspective. But I mean, I think my advice is just like for people to like give it a chance and to like not write it off. And like you can start at any point. It doesn't, you start off small and then you can slowly build onto it. And then, you know, that runner's high really is like such a great feeling. Like once you hit it, you're like, oh, okay, like everything else kind of disappears, and it feels like, oh, like sometimes I'm running and I forget that I'm running, because I'm just like, oh yeah, like I'm just like in a completely different world. But yeah, I mean, like, and as far as like mental health, like it really is like, I think one of the best things for your mental health, because like you get that time to decompress, to meditate, and to really be able to like shut everything off and like get that moment of zen.
Yeah. No, and it's funny, I kept trying to record like a YouTube video on like flow state, right? Like you're saying, like you're out running and you forget that you're running.
Yeah.
And I keep messing up the video, but it's like, yeah, like, you know, I think it was, again, I was talking to my dad, and he's like, I don't think I ever, I mean, he runs all the time. He's like, I don't think I ever really got to that point. It's like, like that, I think makes running like so cool. Is like, it's something you can actually be doing, but it's like time just kind of disappears, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you go on like a mini vacation, and like you could just be like running around the block. But it's like, and I think that's why it's so important to really, you know, teach that to kids like at such an early age. Like, you know, like, they don't have to worry about their parents like dropping them off at like practice or whatever, like how they're gonna get there. It's like they literally could just like go out and run and like have that opportunity to like be in a different world and like to get a break from whatever stress they're experiencing.
And it's funny now too, like I feel like in my head still, like running is the cheapest thing you can do. Unfortunately, like in the world, we've made it such an expensive thing with like all the shoes, racing, you know, like race expenses are crazy and like all that stuff. But it's like, if you boil it down though, you really can just like throw on whatever sneakers you have and run down the street. Like it doesn't actually have to be that expensive, even though we make it that way.
Right.
It's fun, but you know, like it's so accessible. So like as a tool for, you know, your mental health, right? Like we can all pretty much go do it. So it's a great reminder too.
No, yeah, totally. And like, you know, I'll go to the gym, and I feel like it's more challenging for me to get to the gym because I'm like, I like really think about it. I'm like, oh, I have to like walk over there and like, oh, do I have enough time? Because, you know, I'll sign up for a class and I'll be like running late, and then I won't be able to get into the class. You know, like just overthinking it. Whereas running, I'm like, okay, like I literally just, I'm going outside. Like I don't have to worry if I'm going to be late or anything like that. I just get to go do what I can. And then, you know, like that's it. And like, I think that, yeah, like you were saying, that's a really cool part about it. It's very minimal, you know?
Yeah. Now, where can people find you and like anything else like that? Or can we even find you somewhere? How do we find you?
It's like, where's Waldo?
Right.
Well, you know, I can send you the link, but we have, I would love people to check out Mountainside's website. It's mountainside.com. And if you go under like teams and like scroll through our gallery, like you'll see my picture, all of that. I mean, and other than that, I mean, I have like Instagram and stuff like that. I actually post a lot of running stuff on Instagram. That's, I feel like now the majority of my pictures, because it's actually like a cool way for me to like keep track of like my times, my PRs. I'm like, yeah, like I did beat my time from last time. But yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to follow me on that, it's Clark, CLARK _shark, SHARK 20. That was some, you know, username I picked in college, and I was like, it rhymes, it's fun. So yeah, but those are like my main four, like that. I mean, I guess whatever, LinkedIn and all of that. But yeah, I think everyone should really take a chance to like check out the Mountainside website and like really see, like we have a lot of like meditation and stuff like that that's like open for anyone. And you know, we have a lot of community events like yoga and other wellness things, so like that's open to anyone. So, and it's like really cool to like check out different tips and like different recovery approaches as well.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll make sure all those things are linked in the notes for anybody who's trying to find that stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you so much for not only just indulging me in running chat, because that's always what I'm trying to do, but also sharing your story and then like your advice too, because that is definitely invaluable, and I love having different perspectives on things. So this was really fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Tori. I love this.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.